Jesus' baptism prove a challenge to his claim of messiahship? Well, this challenge, there were three kind of specific lines of argument. Number one, baptism is a ritual that claims to remove the stain of original sin, but if Jesus was sinless, why would he have to be baptized? So that's the first line of argument. And this first line of argument misunderstands Christian theology. The view of baptism is not that it removes the stain of original sin. Ephesians chapter 2, maybe one of the clearest passages in the New Testament on the doctrine of salvation, makes it very clear that salvation is by grace through faith, and it's not any work that we can do, not the work of baptism, not our own good deeds. There is nothing but putting our faith in Christ that removes the stain of original sin. Now, there are different views of baptism. Some might hold that baptism is symbolic. Others might hold that baptism is kind of a means to grace. But Christian orthodoxy does not hold that baptism somehow plays a role in our salvation and the removal of sin. So that first part is just a misunderstanding of Christian theology. The second line of argumentation is that to present oneself for baptism is a subservient action. And so you are somehow inferior to the one who is baptizing you. And again, I think this is just a misunderstanding of Christian theology. Number one, there's nothing in the New Testament that indicates the one who is doing the baptizing is somehow superior to the one who is being baptized. Number two, when you look at Jesus and what Jesus came to do, a passage like Philippians 2 makes it clear that Jesus came to serve. So in that sense, Jesus came to serve and not lord it over people, not to take his position of power and lord it over us, but to come and serve. So he was a different kind of leader, a servant leader. But that doesn't mean he's somehow inferior in nature. It doesn't somehow mean that he stops being God. It doesn't change his nature at all. But an understanding of what Christ came to do, yes, he did come to serve. But there's nothing in presenting yourself to be baptized that says that you're inferior to the one who is baptizing you. So that is, again, another misunderstanding of Christian theology. Number three, John the Baptist never comes to follow Jesus as one of his disciples, and so therefore this again undermines Jesus' messiahship. Well, number one, my response would be, I don't know how that follows. Just because John didn't follow Jesus, it doesn't follow that therefore Jesus wasn't the Messiah. It could have been that, maybe John was mistaken and that's the reason why he didn't follow. That could be the case, but it doesn't follow that Jesus wasn't the Messiah. Now, I think what we see in the New Testament is that John had a specific role. And the Old Testament predicts this, right? And Jesus affirms this. Matthew 11, he talks about there's one who's going to be sent as a messenger. In Matthew 3, we see John as the one who prepares the way. So John has a specific role, it seems, in preparing the way for Jesus. So I don't see how, if John never follows Jesus as one of the 12 disciples, that this somehow undermines the messianic claims of Jesus. It doesn't. And you could actually, and some do, take the interpretation that John struggled with some doubt. And of course, in Matthew 11, you have him sending his followers to Jesus to say, okay, are you really the Messiah? And so even if you take that route in your interpretation, that John had doubt about Jesus' claims to messiahship, again, it doesn't follow that Jesus wasn't the Messiah. There are those who watched Jesus do miracles in front of their eyes in the first century who still didn't follow Jesus. But nothing significant follows about Jesus' identity from those actions. And so again, I don't think that claim undermines Jesus' messiahship. So Jesus and his baptism by John the Baptist does not undermine the claim that Jesus was the divine Messiah.